Folks, you may not be aware of it, but these neo-Nazi Ku Klux Klan white supremacists are being more and more successful about getting their message out. Now, I just happened to be scanning my cable channels, which I do periodically, and I came across a channel on DirecTV, One America Now, and it just so happens that this white supremacist, Jason Kelser, was on, and this particular network gave this guy an hour's platform in order to get his message out. Now, I'm going to play for you, I'm not going to play the whole hour, that's ridiculous, but I'm going to play for you selected statements by Mr. Kelser, and how he basically believes that he and his groups were victims. And then he tries to compare himself to black people as far as their struggles to, I guess, get acceptance and their rights in the 60s. It's kind of like ridiculous. And then at the end, I guess the guy's claiming that he's going to sue everybody and their brother for what happened, even though it was the presence of his group and the Unite the Right group of people that basically caused all of the problems and led to, directly or indirectly, well, actually directly in the case of the young lady, and indirectly the case of the two police officers who died in a helicopter crash, their deaths. Here we go.
Is this all about a statue of Robert E. Lee? Is that what this is about?
No, it's not just about the statue of Robert E. Lee. The statue is symbolic. It's symbolic of a people, of white people, people of European ancestry, who are having their culture destroyed and are being replaced through third world immigration.
See, and now that's a bunch of crap as far as his reasons. The statue is symbolic, but it's symbolic to black people as far as how they were treated during times of slavery, and now how, quote unquote, the white power structure wants to put them in their place and remind them of their place by placing statues of people like Robert E. Lee in positions of respect and reverence, which basically is an affirmation of white supremacy. And so again, he's right as far as the symbolism is concerned, but it's a symbol to black people of oppression, not of promise.
Was Robert E. Lee a hero?
I think so. He was a brave man who fought for his state. He lived in a time when being loyal to one's state was a primary honor. And though he might not have agreed with secession, he did go ahead with fighting for the Confederate Army because he believed in his neighbors and the people he had grown up for and fought for all of his life.
Can you understand perhaps potentially why people might be offended by Robert E. Lee? Because there would be one narrative that he was fighting the part of slavery to preserve the slavery, although there's the argument about states' rights and that sort of thing. Do you understand how people might take offense of that?
Well, people are offended by everything, you know, especially when it comes to white people in their history. This same standard is not used for any other people on Earth. There's no one that's trying to tear down the Mayan, Aztecan pyramids, the pyramids at Giza, because they were built with slave labor. This idea about revisiting historical grievances to do with slavery or wars of conquest is only used as a cudgel to attack white people for political gain in Western countries which have pushed identity politics to the forefront of democracy.
Now you'll notice that's a crock of shit, but this reporter, obviously, I don't know if he was really trying to press this guy or not, but as far as symbolism is concerned, and that's what we're going back to, I'm surprised that he didn't bring up the fact that in Germany it's illegal for symbols of the Nazis, etc., their Hitler, their generals, etc. It's illegal for those symbols to be shown in public, and if they find them in private, you got a problem too. Same thing with France and various collaborators before they got turned around. Same thing in Italy with Mussolini. It's only in America where we allow symbols of traitors, and that's exactly what they were, traitors to the United States of America, to be illustrated and obviously given positions of reverence and respect. Bunch of crap. Anyway, I'm going to jump towards the end. That just goes to tell you that this guy, he is a white supremacist, plain and simple. As far as he's concerned, the feelings, rights of black people should be non-existent. And I'm going, instead of jumping to the end, I'm going to jump to another point in the video where he basically states that he wants to take things back to 1950 as far as the population ratios, etc. are concerned. Bear with me for a second. All right, I found the clip that I was looking for, the portion that I was looking for, and this particular portion tells you everything you want to know about this guy and white nationalists, quote, white supremacists, because this guy doesn't even know what he is. This guy absolutely is a white supremacist, even though all he wants to call himself is a nationalist, and then he won't even accept the distinction of being a white nationalist. But he basically is for the supremacy, not biologically, according to his own statement, but in society of white people over everybody else. All right, I'm going to try to keep my comments to a minimum and just let you hear this guy for himself in what he's saying.
Up about this. It's just a lot of concrete. I mean, what's the deal?
Well, it's symbolic of a people. In my opinion, right now, liberal policies are creating an ethnic cleansing of white people from their own countries. You see where the United States has gone from being historically 80 to 85% white towards becoming a minority population within the country that their ancestors founded. And the same thing is happening in Europe, where white people are going to be a minority by 2050. Yes, I do think it's wrong, because I think every people on earth have a right to exist. There's no ethnic cleansing going on of people in Asia or South America or Africa. It's only in the white countries where they are forcing this diversity and diminishing and wiping out a great people.
But ethnic cleansing connotes someone who is systematically, perhaps through some government means or something, kind of taking people and doing away with them. And
well, it can be a lot of people use the term white genocide, and some people say that word is too much, but if you look at the United States definition of genocide, it does include replacement, and that is what's happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're physically removing people. You could be implementing policies which are, for instance, decreasing the birth rates and increasing the birth rates of others. So, for instance, you'd see like heavier taxes on middle-class families who are going to be more likely to be white, and that's going to decrease their the ability to afford to have more children. At the same time, they're subsidizing children who are born on welfare, which are going to be much more likely to be African American or non-white.
Let me stop this asshole right here. There are more white people by far on welfare than any other racial group. So what he just threw out there is total bullshit. Also, he's trying to tell us that the U.S. government is fostering white genocide because of the tax structure in this country. I've never heard more bullshit in my life. If there's one thing that I know is that irregardless and no matter what, people are going to screw. And they are going to screw as much as they are physically able to. And there is no amount of taxation or repression that's going to stop people from screwing. Now, whether they decide to use birth control or not is their own business. But the screwing side of it, the sex side of it, yeah, he's just barking up a really bad tree. Let me continue.
People are also funding a lot of programs in Africa where we see a population explosion. Then they say, well, there's too many people there. Why don't we bring them over into the United States? There's also the issue of immigration from South America, where liberals are basically...
This guy's full of shit. The number one, okay, a group of people, okay, that are immigrating to the United States are by far the Europeans, okay, followed by the Asians. The Hispanic people coming out of Central and South America are third, okay? People coming out of Africa are fourth. This guy is sitting here spewing stuff and he doesn't even have his facts straight.
Trying to keep open border policies, which are pushing the Latin American population into the United States. They know that these people are much more likely to be Democrat voters. So whether...
See, and that's more bullshit if you pay attention. If people are coming into this country, okay, and they are not citizens, how can they be voters? Okay, and I don't want to hear that they come in and they're voting illegally. That's a fallacy. That's a fantasy. So what he's saying again is basically untrue. Now, if he wanted to say that their kids would more likely be Democratic voters, I can't argue for or against that because that may or may not be true. But you would still have to wait 18 years from the point that their children who would be U.S. citizens would have the ability to vote. So what he's saying is not making a heck of a lot of sense for the conditions of today.
It's people who legitimately are folks who...
A lot of Spanish speakers are white people, aren't they? I mean, you go to Spain, everybody there's white.
Yeah, there's some white people in South...
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of white people in Spain and South America. So I don't know what he's, talking about as far as that's concerned, unless, again, he's falling back to illegal immigration. And again, no ability to vote. They can't access benefits. They can't. Children could. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke. Their children could access benefits, but they cannot.
America, but I don't think those are the majority of people who are coming over as illegal immigrants from Mexico and South America.
What is a white supremacist? And would you say that you're a white supremacist or a nationalist? How would you characterize that?
Yeah, I would not call myself a white supremacist. I think that a white supremacist would be somebody who believes that one race is better than the others. And I don't...
That's not true. A white supremacist believes that one race should be superior to another. And that race should be white people.
I think that that's the case. I don't get into those kind of value judgments. I think there certainly are biological differences between races, but I think every race has something to be proud of. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Nationalist, yeah, I would say that I'm a nationalist because I do believe in strong borders. I do believe in a government that looks out for its people over the interest of other nations. And nationalism preserves the identity, heritage, culture, and ethnicity of a nation.
Are you a white nationalist?
I wouldn't say that I'm that either because I have a very specific idea of demographics in America. I'm in favor of the traditional demographics of America prior to the 1965 Hart-Celler Immigration Act, when the country was historically 80 to 85% white. I think that after...
And that's what makes him a white nationalist. He wants to take the numbers back, reduce the non-white population, and increase the white population. That is the textbook definition of being a white nationalist.
The founding of the country, there was a historical stake where, there was a certain number of white people who came over, brought Western culture and philosophy, the ideals of liberal democracy that founded the country, but they also forced black people to come into the country as slaves through no decision of their own.
So isn't that the fault of the white man then? Didn't he start it?
Well, I'm saying that because those people were brought in through no fault of their own, certainly that percentage of black people, who were brought over here and had a say in the founding of the country,
I can't believe that he had the balls to say that black people had a say in the founding of the country. And the other thing that he conveniently missed, the percentage of white people that came over to this country obviously was small. The percentage of black people who came over as slaves obviously was small in comparison to the people that were already here, Native Americans. If we wanted to take the country back to what it originally was when white people got here, the white population probably would have been no more than 1 or 2%, with another 1 or 2% of black people. Now, there is the theory that there were already black people here, and I'm not going to get into all of that, but we damn sure know that the Native Americans were here, and their numbers were overwhelming. So his contention that white people were the majority in this country at the very beginning of it is absolutely and unequivocally false.
They should have a stake in the population as well. Certainly that would also go to Chinese who are brought in to work on the railroads and so on and so forth. But I don't think that it's representative of the demographics of the United States to bring in all these Middle Eastern Muslims into the country. I think that completely changes the character of the nation. This is not an Islamic country.
All right, I'm going to stop that part right there, and then I'm going to jump to the end where he's threatening to sue. But I think you basically got the flavor of what I'm talking about. Hang on.
What is the future for your organization? Where do you go from here?
Well, my number one priority right now is countering this fake media narrative that's come up around the rally, calling it a neo-Nazi rally, saying that
but there were Nazis there, weren't there?
I didn't invite any Nazis, certainly.
That's a bunch of crap. That Unite the Right, if you go on their Facebook webpage, they were inviting any group that was alt-right. And obviously the neo-Nazis and the KKK, if there's anybody that's alt-right, it's those groups.
And I think that the other thing is that people have to realize that in the youth culture online, there's a lot of people who use Nazi or offensive imagery because they are doing it in a reflexive way, where people are, as young white men, are so used to being called racist, Nazi, whatever, that some of them just own it and are like, screw you, that's what I am. But it doesn't literally mean that people are trying to go and reenact 1930s Germany. But whatever the case may be, I don't like that association, and I've never encouraged that association within my organizations.
I don't think I have any more questions. Do you have, is there anything I didn't ask about that you would like to say to set the record straight, or anything else?
Well, just going forward, to finish my response to your previous question, is that we're going to work on bringing the city of Charlottesville to court and making them pay for this monumental disaster that they have created by covering up the truth and trying to use this event to portray average Americans standing up for their rights as evil people, and then using that as a cudgel to attack the president. And
the Klan and neo-Nazis are average Americans standing up for their rights? Really?
I really do hope administration officials, if they're not able to directly engage with me because of all that's been going on, I hope that they will at least understand West Bellamy, look into the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, and you will see this conspiracy that they have created to attack the right-wing and conservative movement in America. These people have to be exposed because this was a terrible and tragic event, not only for the people who were hurt and the lives that were lost, but because they intentionally created those circumstances for political gain. And I don't think that they have any regrets about it. Wes Bellamy was laughing and joking one day after this event when or a couple days after when I went to do my press conference. He was laughing because these jackals have gotten exactly what they want, and we cannot allow them to get away with it. They have.
Wes Bellamy was probably laughing because you are a flippin' joke.
To be investigated, they have to be exposed.
You mentioned the statues. A thought occurs to me, which is, I think that the one in Charlottesville was put up, what, in the 20s or something, or?
I don't remember exactly.
Anyway, it's not been quite 100 years, but for a long time, nobody thought anything about these, and then all of a sudden, what?
I gotta correct you, my friend. Okay, for a long time, nobody white thought about these statues. The black community thought about these statues every day because we had to walk past them to see them, to walk into schools with the names of these racist traitors, okay? So we thought about it, but because you guys didn't think about it, you are trying to state that there was no thought of what these statues represented, but that could not be further from the truth. Black people thought about these statues, these symbols, and the oppression that they represented every single day.
Change to get people so upset and so exercised over just an inanimate object that, you know, has been there for a long time. What do you suppose changed in the culture?
They elected bad leaders. You had
he hit it on the head. I don't know about bad, but they elected, as far as they were concerned, the wrong leaders, i.e. this thing totally ramped up after a certain black president was elected, and prior to that, after a certain rights and amendments were ratified within the Constitution, as far as a certain, well, let's not even call them certain, voting rights, housing, etc., was extended out to black people by law, and the laws were being enforced. That's when you saw all of this stuff starting to spring up as a white racist response to the leveling of the playing field.
In a city which is basically the capital of white guilt, electing a black supremacist mayor, Wes Bellamy, who had these awful things to say about white people.
He was mayor?
Yeah, he's vice mayor.
Vice mayor.
He is vice mayor, and he said all kinds of things like my
Was he
favorite
mayor
thing.
at the time then? Was he actually mayor?
Yeah,
before?
he's been the one who's pushing to remove the statue.
But he's vice mayor now. Was he mayor at one previous time?
No. The mayor is Mike Signer during this whole process. The vice mayor has been Wes Bellamy, but this vice mayor Wes Bellamy and his cohorts, Kristen Zakos and others, have had a lot of racially tinged, hateful things to say about white people. They wanted to tear down this statue as part of this social justice agenda. Before that, the city council was focused on boring things, which is what they should have been focused on. They were focused on water reservoirs, they were focused on road construction, they were focused on infrastructure. Now you go into a Charlottesville City Council meeting, everything is about homosexuals, trannies, blacks, illegal immigrants, and creating sanctuary cities. They said that Charlottesville is a sanctuary city and capital of the resistance against Trump.
Translation, now that they're looking at social justice, which obviously is to the benefit of non-white people, you guys get totally pissed off.
So don't be fooled by these people. These are not good people. These are far left communists. And when the conservative media goes and plays their narrative, we're playing right into their hands.
You mentioned Trump. One of the things he said about your demonstration was that this was evil.
No, that's not true. It was just a demonstration. It was supposed to be a march. It was supposed to be speeches. These are all constitutionally protected things, and these are things that people in the civil rights era were able to do. Blacks were...
Here we go with him comparing his particular organizations to black people in the civil rights era.
Able to do, and others were able to do, and that's all we were trying to do, is exercise our constitutional rights and have a civil rights movement. And we had violent opposition, just like the Ku Klux Klan gave violent opposition to the blacks in the civil rights era. The same thing happened to us.
There is like no flipping way that this guy in this lifetime or the next should even let the words escape his lips that he feels like his position is the same as black people during the civil rights era. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that these guys are getting a platform, and in this particular case, this guy's gotten a platform on a national channel, so his message is going out there to, you know, depending on how many people have cable in this particular channel, you know, 300 plus million people. So I guess he should consider the fact that he's gotten onto this program a victory for white nationalists, white supremacists, whatever you want to call them. I call them racist assholes.